This was a face that captured hearts around the world. The story of Lindsay Eberhardt's need for a liver transplant went international and made medical history. The Mississauga girl became the youngest child in Canada at the age of 2 to survive a liver transplant. Sadly, 33 years later, Lindsay has passed away. But that little girl who lived for 33 more years paved the way for other transplant patients, especially ones here at Toronto General Hospital, where more transplants are done than anywhere else in the country. She has left quite a legacy behind. Her smile melted hearts, and her desperate need for a liver had the world rooting for her. But Lindsay's parents were told there was little or no hope.
At that time, transplants weren't being done on children. And I remember being told, just go home and have more kids because she's not going to get a transplant. It's a very slim chance of getting one and even less of surviving.
Lindsay's parents didn't give up. They went to the media and challenged the system to help their daughter. That led to 4 hospitals in the U.S. putting her on their waiting lists. And despite the odds, Lindsay was able to fight long enough to get her new liver. The transplant was performed in Boston. She grew to be a happy, vibrant child. This video was taken just before her 10th birthday.
One that always stands out is the sunlight bouncing off her hair as she comes running across the yard to the window. And she's got a huge smile on her face, and she's just full of life, absolutely full of life and strength.
A lot has changed since Lindsay's first transplant. Back then, performing one on a child her age was considered revolutionary. Now it is done on babies as young as 6 weeks old. Anti-rejection drugs are better tolerated. And because of technology, doctors are able to use organs considered unusable just 10 years ago.
The biggest change has been the increase in the availability of organs. Organ donor rates in this province have risen substantially over the last 2 decades. With a 30% increase just in the past year alone.
Yes, there are more donors, but there are also more patients.
The gap between supply and demand continues to exist. Our waiting list, despite our best year in our history, our waiting list is exactly the same length as it was a year ago. We had exactly the same number of deaths on the waiting list last year as we did the year before and the year before that.
How can that be when you have a 30% increase and yet the death rate is the same and the wait list is the same?
The demand for transplant is increasing at exactly the same rate as the supply.
Last year, there were more than 1,200 transplants in Ontario alone, with about 1,500 people on wait lists. One of them dies every 3 days before they can get a transplant. Lindsay had a second transplant 7 years ago. Her family says she had a good life despite her health issues. The little girl who became a symbol of hope to those who had none leaves a lasting legacy. She helped change attitudes and make transplants more acceptable.
We have been blessed to have had an additional 33 years with her. I wish things were different. But if one thing can come out of this, it's that transplants are needed. They're a big part of society today. They weren't then, and I think that we've become more educated and more understanding of that need.
Usually around 1,500 people are waiting for a transplant. One dies every 3 days, still waiting for an organ. You can become a donor. Just sign up at beadonor.ca. It only takes a few minutes. Cynthia Mulligan, City News.